Welcome to the Fish Nerds, where we talk about fish, fishing, and eating fish. I'm Clay Groves, Chief Executive Fish Nerd of the podcast. With me today is my kid, Zoe. Zoe, how are you?
Good.
Good. And how old are you?
I'm 10 years old.
10 years old, and it is not your first time being on the podcast.
Nope.
No. And why are you on the podcast today?
Dad couldn't find anyone to be on his podcast.
Because I couldn't find anybody else to do it. So, hey, what holiday's coming up just in a day or so? Halloween's coming up, right. And to celebrate Halloween, we're going to talk about some of the 5 scariest, most feared fish on the planet Earth. Can you think of any scary fish?
I thought of one, but I couldn't remember the name. I think they're called googly eyes, but I'm not sure.
I'm definitely, if there's a fish called googly eyes, it's totally scary.
Its eyes, when it looks up, it doesn't have to swim. Its eyes just look through the top of its head. Its eyes just look through the top of its head. It has a clear head, so you can see like the eye.
That is the grossest thing I've ever heard.
It's really cool.
So I'll have to do some Googling around to find out these googly-eyed fish that you're talking about. So in addition to talking about the googly-eyed, scary 5 scariest fish on Earth, Doc Martin is here to talk about how the moon impacts fish behavior. Do you think the moon impacts people behavior?
No.
No. Well, a lot of people do. A lot of people think that a full moon, people act crazier than they do, say, on a waxing gibbous moon or other kinds of moon phases. So we're going to find out how the moon impacts fish. Also, I met some guys who are making a new website called Fisherguiding.com, and they're going to share with us how they connect anglers with guide services. And just for the record, the Fish Nerds have now signed up to be part of that website. And our friend Hugo is back with a culinary delight. His segment is called Killing Fish and Time with Hugo. So that adds that scary. Killing fish is scary, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
by the way, how do you feel about killing fish?
I'm fine unless it's called a goldfish.
You don't like killing goldfish?
Well, because it would be your pet goldfish that died.
Yeah. Although you can catch goldfish in the wild.
Yes, I know. I'd eat one of those in a day.
Yeah, and just by the way, on a little bit of a sidebar, next week on the show, Doc Martin and Fish Guy Josh are going to be here to talk all about goldfish. So it's going to be very, very exciting next week.
Nice.
But let's start right in here. Let's not waste any more time. Let's talk about the 5 scariest fish. And we're going to do this today, Zoe. We're going to do one fish at a time, and then we'll have a segment, and then more fish, and go from there, okay?
Got it.
All right, so the number 5 scariest fish, this is 5 from the top, so 5th is pretty scary, is called the giant devil catfish. And this devil catfish comes from southern Asia, and they got their name because they can be huge size and weight. You can see a picture right now at fishnerds.com. So are you looking at a picture? Describe that fish.
It looks a lot like a catfish.
Yeah, it is a catfish, and how that which we said, but it actually has a kind of wider, broader face and these like whiskers that come out.
I noticed that.
The devil head giants can grow up to 7 feet long and weigh up to 200 pounds. What's even worse is they're known for attacking people, right? It's believed that a single or a group of these catfish were responsible for numerous attacks on humans in the Kali River, somewhere between Nepal and India, in the period between 1998 and 2007. Over time, these fish developed a taste for our flesh. Guess how they developed that taste for flesh, Zoe?
I have no idea.
All right. Well, a lot of cultures, when their people die, they float them out in the river and burn them on a funeral pyre. And it is said that floating those bodies out in the river and burning them started feeding the fish, and the fish got a taste for human flesh. So that's the devil catfish, giant devil catfish.
Okay.
Yeah, that was number 5, right? We have more coming, don't you worry. So let's talk a little bit about how the moon impacts fish's behavior. On Facebook, I put a poll out. By the way, if you're not already part of our Facebook group, get there. We've got a Fish Nerds Facebook group, and that's where all the action happens. And we asked the question, what moon phase is best for fishing? Zoe, do you know the phases of the moon?
Yes, I do.
All right, tell us some.
So first the new moon, which is you can't see any moon at all. And then there's a waxing crescent. And a waxing crescent is like a sliver of a moon. After you get the first quarter, which looks like a half moon, people normally call it, but it's not. Then you get the waxing gibbous, which is kind of like just the waxing crescent was taken off the full moon.
A little slice of the moon is off?
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the full moon, and the full moon is actually just a half moon because you never see the other side of the moon.
Ever.
It's called the dark side of the moon. And then you got a waning gibbous. Then after, you got a third quarter. Then a waning crescent. And then back to new again.
Yeah. So we did a poll on Facebook, Zoe, to see what people thought. Now, by doing a poll on Facebook, are we doing science? By just asking people what do they think? Is that science?
Nope.
No, why not?
Because people have their opinions.
It doesn't matter what they think.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Right. But we did it anyway, and most people say all of the phases of the moon are the best for fishing.
Oh, okay.
And we had some comments under it, and our friend Daniel said if you're married with kids, you want to fish whenever you can. Robert Otis said full moon for trout and salmon family, and new moon for game fish like burbot, pike, bass, and catfish. Brian McGilvra, big fan of the podcast here, he's always on our show, said whatever moon phase it happens to be when he's not working, LOL. So it all really depends on your personality. Do you ever care about the moon when you're fishing?
No.
No, I sometimes look at full moon and go fishing during a full moon at nighttime because I like
that's
light.
fun.
But I don't actually think about the fish behavior. But luckily, Doc Martin, our friend, holds a PhD in biology from Kansas State University, where her research is focused on prairie stream fishes, and she actually knows some stuff, and she did a whole segment for us right now on how the moon impacts fishes. Here's Doc Martin.
Hi, everyone. This is Doc Martin. I am here today answering a fan question about lunar phases affecting fishes. Specifically, this question was dealing with freshwater sport fish, which I think is very cool. So let's start first. The main question is, does the moon affect freshwater fishing? First, a lot of background. There's a lot of research on how the moon affects marine fishes. And it affects the light of the moon, so the lunar illumination can affect the vertical migration of like zooplankton and other small little food bits that the fish will actually follow. Of course, the moon affects the tides. I know a lot of you folks that are listening are actually from coastal areas. Unlike me, I'm right in the middle of the country. So you guys are probably a lot more familiar with how tides work than I am. I don't get to see them all that often. Also, interestingly, I found that because of the way that the tides work, a lot of fishes utilize that in that their larva stages or their larval stages. Since a lot of fish larvae maybe aren't very mobile, they time their spawning period and growth period during particular phases of the moon and the tides, so that way those larvae can get dispersed properly, which is pretty cool. Another one, a study that I found, by Leroy Fulmer, published in 1981, looked at how the lunar phase affected thyroxine. And that deals with metabolism of fishes. So basically, in these salmonid populations, these guys are migrating. In this particular population, these salmonids were in freshwater. They're going to migrate to the ocean. And it turns out that they will use other cues, so photo period, so what time of year it is, temperature, and things like that. But also, they will use cues from the lunar cycle to change their metabolism to get ready for this long migration or this long trip, which I thought was very interesting. Another one that I found, there was a study by, so the lead author is Sugama, and this was published in 2008, and this looks at the rabbit fish species, Siganus guttatus, the golden rabbit fish. So this is a reef fish, so we're still in marine land here. And it has a lunar synchronized spawning cycle, which is very common for a lot of marine fishes, like I said earlier. And there's a gene nicknamed PER2, so PER2. And it turns out that the photo period, so day versus night, affects the regulation of that particular gene. But also, the light of the moon affects that particular gene. And they did a really cool study. So they basically went out, they collected a bunch of juvenile golden rabbit fish of a certain size, And then they put those into study tanks to monitor, keep everything the same. The only thing that they're going to change is their exposure to either sunlight or moonlight. After these different exposures, they were, so like the new moon phase, which there would be no light because the new moon, you don't see anything, or the full moon phase, in which you'd have a lot of moonlight. After they were exposed to those treatments for a particular amount of time, the researchers would remove the pineal gland, and then they also removed pineal glands from wild-caught fish, and then they checked the amount and the regulation of this PER2 gene, and they found that both the sun and moonlight affected whether these fishes were using that gene to regulate different hormones, to tell them, what their internal kind of body clock is doing, the circadian rhythm, which I think was really cool. And I know I'm going through some of the marine stuff really, really quickly because I wanted to talk about some of the freshwater studies, since that was what the question was about. So what I could find was that the first study was from Welsh in 2016. And he found that there's lots of different effects that cause, American eels to be able to pass through dams. So, of course, not through dams, but there's special eel passes that some dams have built, and the eels will use those. Scientists will sit and monitor and count, take length data, and all that other fun stuff. And what they ended up finding was that it's complicated, of course. I know a couple of the fans were making fun of me and, we should ask Doc Martin, what's she going to say? Well, it depends. Ha ha ha. Yeah, well, you're very right. Thank you. Ha ha ha. It does depend. But I think what's interesting is that the lunar phase did affect whether or not these eels were passing through the eel pass on the dam. However, is that because of just the lunar phase, or also river discharge and things like that? They found that river discharge and low levels of lunar illumination were associated with upstream migration of American eels. And this is in the Shenandoah River. And that's really cool. So basically, if there's more water and there's less light, these eels are more likely to pass through this dam. Now, I have a conundrum for you. They could not separate this. So you can imagine, first of all, the level of light being important for migration. So if there's too much light, you might be more prone to predation or something like that. And when there's less light, you might feel a little bit safer. So you're more likely to go ahead and take that chance. However, discharge is also important. Now, if the water is deeper, the level of light must also decrease, right? So you can imagine if you're 4 feet from the bottom of a river and you stay at 4 feet and you just add more water on top of you because the light gets reflected and refracted and doesn't penetrate the water very deep, is it really because of the lunar illumination, or is it because of this increase in just the plain amount of water? Probably it's a little bit of both, which I think is what the authors ended up concluding, that it is both river discharge and lunar illumination. So the best chance eels have, or they like the best to make their upstream migrations, is when you have high river discharge and low light levels. I thought that was pretty cool. And then the next one that I found was a little piece by Mike Allen, The Science of Bass Fishing. So this is for all you bass fishermen out there, and women, of course. He just wrote a small piece, does the lunar cycle affect fishing success of bass? So if you are a fisherman and you want to go catch bass, should you go during a certain part of the lunar phase? And it turns out in the research that he cited, both that he actually conducted and other fellow scientists that he cited, no evidence was found that suggests activity level of largemouth bass were affected by the lunar cycle in any kind of repeatable manner. Now, there is evidence that the number of bass caught and the size of the bass reported were bigger during new moon and full moon phases. Okay, so you might think, aha, Well, there you go. Then, yeah, of course the moon affects the catchability of bass. Like, look, we have data that shows we catch more bass during the new moon and full moon phases. Then I ask you, fans, is it because of the lunar phase, or is it a self-selection bias where fishermen already believe that they will be more successful? Therefore, they plan their fishing excursions around the lunar cycle because they expect to be able to catch more and bigger fish. Aha. We don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I personally have never planned any fishing excursions or anything like that around the lunar cycle, but I'm also admittedly not much of a fisher woman. I am more of a fisher observer. So I want you guys to think about that. I would like to know, comment on the Facebook page. Do you guys plan your fishing excursions around the lunar cycle? Is that a thing that a lot of anglers do? I don't know. You tell me. And then the very last paper I found is my favorite one. So this is by Vincent and Angradi. And this is about musky lunacy. Does the lunar cycle influence angler catch of the muskellunge? Which I think is really cool. So, as they note in their introduction, we already know that there are studies of the effects of the moon on fish behavior, fish spawning, vertical and horizontal movement, migration, general activity levels, feeding, vulnerability to commercial recreational fishing. So all of these things may be synchronized with the lunar cycle in marine and freshwaters. And so there has been a couple studies that show that the catch per unit effort of pike over in German Lake was elevated during the full and new moon. There was also one that found that trophy pike in Indiana, my home state, go Hoosiers, were caught more frequently around full and new moons. So, is that true? Is there really that, or is it that self-selection bias that I mentioned earlier? I don't know. We're going to find out. These guys did a really cool study. So I think it went over several years, and they tracked all sorts of different data. They used Muskies Inc. Incorporated Inc. INC period catch data, daytime catch, nighttime catch, and they looked at Ontario, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Ohio, all sorts of different lakes all around there, which is pretty cool. And they did find that the lunar cycle on daytime muskie catch was significant for all geographic groupings except Wisconsin. So if you guys are from Wisconsin or Ohio, then it turns out that for some reason the moon does not affect your muskies. But if you're from the other regions, apparently the moon does affect the catchability of muskies. So maybe you want to go to Ontario during the full moon, not so much Wisconsin. Now, why would that make a difference? Why would Ontario have this high catchability of these muskies and big muskies, whereas Wisconsin did not? I'm so glad that you asked. So it turns out that larger fish, larger muskies at least in this case, I could not find much other studies that were as rigorous as this one, so I want to limit it to muskies, unfortunately. Big muskies were more affected by the lunar cycle than small muskies. Also, if we compare Wisconsin, the size of the lakes from their data set versus the size of the lakes from the other areas, we find that the lakes that they used from Wisconsin were smaller. So you could extrapolate that to suggest Wisconsin in general, on the lakes that they used, just contained smaller muskie. Huh? Maybe. And if Wisconsin muskie in general were smaller, and we already know that big muskie are affected more than small muskie, then that might be why you don't see a pattern in Wisconsin, but you do in other places. So ideally what we would do is we would go to Wisconsin and we would fish all these other bigger lakes that should have bigger muskie, and see if that pattern would still hold. That would be awesome. Maybe we'll have some volunteers who want to do that research. Just fish muskie for science, of course. Very scientific. So again, there's a few things that are a little bit problematic. Do anglers concentrate their angling effort during what they perceive to be favorable moon phases? And again, if that is the case, and we don't know that for sure, then we can't really say it's the lunar cycle. It's probably just the actual effort out there. However, these authors suggests that the observed lunar effects on the muskie catch are not entirely due to increased angler effort, but also reflect a biological response of the fishes. And they decided that because they actually studied the effort amount across this wide range of distributions of lakes and, countries, of course. And it turns out that the effort didn't really significantly change whether or not they caught a lot of muskies. So basically, they took effort into account in their model. And while it was important, like if you have no effort, you're not going to catch any muskies, right? That makes a lot of sense. However, even if you put in a little bit of effort, there was still a bump in the number of muskies caught and the size. And if you put in a lot of effort, of course, a lot of effort, you caught more muskies than the little effort. But a lot of effort also had the same size bump. So, and that bump ended up being about 5%. So if you are a low effort fisherman and you happen to go muskie fishing during full or new moon, you have a 5% bump in your chance of getting one of those bigger muskies. But what does that actually mean? And I think there was something like if you get one fish in 10,000 casts, what this becomes is you get one fish in 9,500 casts. Okay, so yes, there's a bump, but it's not very big. So just a little tiny bump. But it's still really neat. So, but why is that? Why would muskie be affected by the lunar cycles? Well, we're thinking the idea is that maybe this lunar synchronization of these fish, it must convey, or in the evolutionary past, conveyed some kind of fitness advantage for the fish. Basically, it was useful. So somehow, by these muskie synchronizing with the lunar cycle, it somehow increases their energy intake and they perform better. So it's beneficial to a muskie to be synced up with the lunar cycle, which is pretty cool. So, and there's lots of other examples, marine pelagic predators track prey associated with lunar cycles. Fish like tuna and sharks are adapted to feed at variable depths, and they move deeper during periods of the full moon. There you go. They're also less vulnerable to anglers at the full moon. So in that case, if you're going tuna or shark fishing, you don't want to go when there's a full moon because they will go deeper to avoid that light. Haha. Billfishes, in general, there's specific species, but some of them are more vulnerable to angling during the full moon period because of the reduction in available prey. So it makes these fish desperate for food, so they're more likely to bite your hook instead of go find their normal prey. The physiological adaptations for feeding at different depths probably doesn't apply to the muskie. They likely evolved as a river species, and they're going to have relatively recently invaded a deeper lentic environment. So somehow this lunar gravitation has been suggested as a cue for fish behavior in pike and now in muskie. But the biological mechanism that link the muskie behavior to the actual moon phases is a mystery. We don't know. I don't know why you can catch more muskie when there's a new moon or a full moon. You do, but what biological mechanism is behind that? So in theory or hypothesis would be a little bit more appropriate. Maybe it is some evolutionary lingering advantage or something like that. I can't answer that question, which I think is really cool. I love questions that I can't answer. They're my favorite kind. So, different animals behave different ways. And so at some point, having this lunar sinking cycle benefits them for some reason. And I think that's super cool. What I would really like, this is my challenge to all of you fishermen, is for the sake of science, okay, don't do extra effort during the new moon and full moon phases, because then us scientists can't tease that data apart to really get at the effects. So if you are a big new moon or full moon fisherman, you're confounding the science there. And I'm only teasing, so you can fish whenever you want. But I think that's just, that's interesting. That's all. I don't have anything else. I hope that answered the question of basically, so does the moon affect fishing success? Yes. Yes, it does, but just not by very much, just by 5%. I also got to learn a really cool new word, so I want to share that word with you. Zeitgeber. Zeitgeber. And that means it's a cue from the environment that resets your body clock, your circadian rhythm. So, super cool vocabulary word. And I really hope that answered the fan question. I really, really wish that I could have given you a mechanism as to why the moon has those effects. But right now we just have a couple basically guesses or hypotheses, but none of those, to my knowledge, have been solidly explained. And if you ever have any other questions or anything else, you can always find me on Facebook through the Fish Nerds podcast. I'm Doc Martin, and I love answering your questions, especially ones like this where it's just, what an interesting question, right? The moon is so far away and we're losing it. I think by like 1 centimeter a year, the moon gets further and further away from the Earth. So eventually we won't have one. Then what will happen? I think that's a really interesting question. So what will happen when we don't have tides anymore? We don't have these gravitational effects. How will the fish be affected when tides are only dictated by the sun, right? Because when the sun and the moon align or they're in opposites, that affects the tides. I think a lot of you coastal folks are probably very aware of that. But what happens if we don't have the moon? I don't know the answer to that one either. So if you have any thoughts or ideas, throw them my way, because I would love to hear them. And maybe we can have a little discussion about the moon affecting the fishes. And I think Halloween is right around when this time of year. So when you're looking up at the moon in your super scary costume, you can always think of the fishes. And I think that's all that I have. I hope that was relatively informative. And I thought it was really cool that the moon clearly affects fishing, and also the regulation of different hormones and gene expression and all sorts of other crazy molecular level stuff in fish. All right. Well, until next time, I'm so happy that you guys still like to listen to me geek out on the podcast, and fish on.
All right. Thanks, Doc. We appreciate that. All right. Now, time for our number 4th scariest fish in the world. And this fish is awesome. It's called the Goliath tigerfish.
Tigerfish.
It's a creature so horrific that it makes a feared piranha look like a pet goldfish. Reaching lengths of more than 6 feet and weighing up to 70 pounds, these megafish stalk the waterways of Central Africa in packs, shredding even large prey in a matter of seconds. Aren't they beautiful, Zoe?
Yes.
If you were to describe this fish, how would you describe it?
They have teeth. They have very large teeth that I think are about an inch apart each. And they have ginormous eyeballs.
Yeah. I mean, clearly a big predator fish. And those fish teeth could shred you to bits. The mouth on this yellow-eyed monster fish is studded with giant dagger-like canine teeth, each more than 2 inches long. A number of deaths went unexplained in the Congo River and were attributed to this mysterious spirit foe with dark powers. That is until extreme angler Jeremy Wade pulled one of these horrific creatures from the depths of the river. So Jeremy Wade is the one who kind of made these guys famous. He does a show called River Monsters.
I've heard of that. That's on Netflix.
He's on Netflix, yeah. Good. Well, that was some
electric eels.
Oh, let's talk about electric eels. We were going to wait a minute and talk about other things, but let's just jump right in.
Let's talk about another
The
thing.
number 3 scariest fish in the world is the what?
Electric eel.
The electric eel. And do you know anything about these already?
Yes, I do.
What do you know?
they live in the Amazon River, and they they have shocks in them so they can paralyze their meal with their body, and then they can eat it without a hassle of a moving prey in their mouth.
So they shock in order to stun their prey.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think you're probably right about that. Let's see what we've got here. The electric eel is an elongated South American fish that produces a powerful electric shock to stun its prey. You got it. Usually other fish. Long, cylindrical, scaleless, and usually gray-brown. The electric eel can grow to 2.75 meters. That's 9 feet and weigh nearly 48 pounds. The tail region constitutes about 4/5 of the eel's total length, which is bordered along the underside by an undulating anal fin that is used to propel the fish. Despite its name, it's not a true eel, but it's related to the keratin fish, which include piranhas and neon tetras. The electric eel is one of the principal aquatic predators of the whitewater flooded forest known as the Varzea. In one fish survey of a typical Varzea, electric eels made up more than 70% of the biomass. So these fish don't move a lot. They like sluggish water, and they often will gulp air on the surface, right? Now, here's the question. Do they kill people?
I'd guess no.
Yeah. All right. Well, the tail region contains electric organs, which are derived from muscle tissues innervated by spinal nerves, discharges 300 to 650 volts, a charge power enough to jolt humans. These organs may also be used to help creature navigate and communicate with other electric eels. I don't know that they kill a lot of people, but the potential is there. And certainly would hurt you.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Hey, speaking of hurting you, remember meeting Hugo a couple of years ago? He fed you some really spicy beef jerky?
Yes.
Yes. Well, he's back again this week cooking a fish on his segment Killing Fish in Time with Hugo. He's cooking tog. Have you heard of tog?
No, but it sounds delicious.
Yeah, it is delicious. Now, these fish...
The picture looks like he has a snout.
They do have these kind of funny little mouths. Now, these tog are great fish. They are... It's actually spelled Tautog. And their mouths are designed to crush up and eat shellfish and crabs and things like that.
Cool.
So their meat has a kind of similar flavor. And they're really, really delicious. Here's Hugo. Thanks, Hugo.
What's going down, Fish Nerd Nation? Hugo Madero's here, fishing correspondent for the Fish Nerds. And as you might be able to hear, I am doing, well, guess what? Some cooking of great seafood. So I'm pumped, guys. This time of year here, it's the fall in New England. I'm in Massachusetts, and this is tautog season, what they call blackfish in Rhode Island. They're awesome fish, phenomenal to eat, one of the best fish you can eat anywhere. Super cool. They live in the rocks. They eat crab. They got these crazy buck teeth. They fight like bulldogs. They're just awesome. So we've been catching them. I just caught some, went out with my good friend Norm. We went out in the kayaks, and we got into them. The spot that we discovered, a friend of ours shared with us, is real good. And so we've been doing awesome there all summer in various spots on lots of ground fish. We did great on ground fish this year. I got tons of sea bass and fluke and all sorts of things. But this weekend we were just focusing on the tautog. The season's closed for fluke and sea bass, and we didn't see anything else around. Oh, I was surprised. I hooked into a triggerfish, which was really weird, and I lost them right on the side of the boat. But those are these tropical fish that come up here in the late summer. Really surprised that I caught one this time of year. But yeah, I am pumped about these tautog. They're just a blast to catch, and we're gonna do some cooking with them right now. So right now, what I'm doing is one of my favorite types of soups. It's the Vietnamese noodle soup called pho. That's P-H-O, but it's pronounced pho. The weird thing, well, I got this, the pho powder mix that you can buy on Amazon. If you just Google it, pho powder or pho spices, you'll find it. It's actually really good. If you get a really good Vietnamese noodle place, they can have the homemade ones that are unbelievable, but they're so hard to make. It involves making this stock that takes hours and hours and all sorts of crazy spices. I tried this powder from Amazon, and it's actually pretty good. So we're going to do that. Now, the funny thing is I have it. It's really made for beef, but I am going to go crazy and try it anyways, and I think it's going to be awesome. So I'll post the recipe online. You guys can hear it. I got it boiling here already. But simply, I'll explain. I got some, I'm going to do it my way with some of the ingredients I like. So I got some oyster mushrooms I'm going to put in there. I got fish stock with the powder, the fuss spice powder, boiling. Got a red onion and sliced that super, super thin. Gonna add the mushrooms. Gonna add a jalapeno sliced up and some cilantro. And then I'll put in the tautog, which I'll take a fillet and cut it into small pieces. Cilantro at the end, and then we have these Asian-style rice noodles that I'll put in right at the end because those take like 2 minutes to cook. And and then we have fresh basil and mung bean sprouts. So that's all. Those are the traditional things you'll see if you get any of these, but this is going to be awesome. I'm just making myself hungry here. So I got 3 tog to play with for food. That's the legal limit that you can take per person per day. So I got 3 of those guys. One of them was awesome. One was big. I was surprised. I had my drag set pretty good because these guys, they'll burrow themselves into the rocks. So you really have to have, it's good to have the drag tightened down and get them up and off out of the rocks as soon as possible. So this one I actually casted to, which was weird, but I was just getting bored. I anchored down in one spot for a few minutes just to take a break and get something to eat. So when you're jigging in the same spot, you might not get any because they'll find a hole and they stay in that hole. Typically, there's exceptions, but that's what they do. So I casted it a jig with a half of an Asian live crab on it. Hucked it out as far as I could. It dropped, and I felt the bite as soon as it hit the bottom. And I looked at my buddy Norm, who was next to me. He was laughing. The drag just started peeling, and that's when I knew this guy was good. So he turned out to be, I think he was 20.5 inches, 21 inches. Real nice looking fish, real thick. So I'm pumped. Going to do this one here today, and then for dinner, we are going to do typically what people do with these things because they're just the musculature of the meat, of the flesh of the tautog is really firm, which is awesome, but it's still, it's not chewy or anything. It's not like lobster stringy. It melts in your mouth, but it stands up to liquids really well. It doesn't fall apart. So it's famous for chowder, like the New England chowder. But I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do one of my favorite recipes. I've mentioned it before. It's been posted before. I've been doing it again. It's an Asian Filipino recipe that involves coconut milk, ginger, garlic, onions, and I think that's about it. Garlic, onions, ginger, coconut milk. And those flavors are so light and fragrant. They're just awesome. All right, I'm making myself salivate here. I will post all the recipes online. I'm going to get this cooking. I'll post some pictures of the final dish. And pumped for this time of year, guys. If you guys get a chance, go out in 20 to 30 feet of water off, in the ocean. Look on maps. Look like on Navionics web app. If you Google that, you can see the charts and it shows you the topography underwater. I just look for humps, for rocks, because these guys live in the rocks. So if you see a section that's like 20 to 30 feet deep, but all of a sudden there's a little hump in it that's like 5 feet deep, I just go straight to there and fish all around there because they love those rocks. If you're in flat, sandy bottom, you're not going to have to tog there. So learning a little bit. Getting out there again Saturday, wicked pumped for it. And I love this type of fishing. It's so simple because all I got to bring is a rod, a bunch of these tautog jigs. If you look up a blackfish jig or tautog, T-A-U-T-O-G jigs, you'll see these things. It's basically a hunk of lead with a big hook on it. You go to the bait store and you pick up the crabs that they sell All the stores in New England should have them now. We fish in the Massachusetts, Rhode Island area a lot, so we stop at Ocean State Tackle, Dave He Knows place. He's always got crabs there. So we always get crabs every time we see Dave. You cut them in half, put it in through one leg hole and out another so they don't fall off, and drop it down on the rocks. And that's about it. So yeah, we're going to scout out a new place. I'm going to do all my research on it. Like I said, find rocks and humps and things like that. And pumped to do it. All right, guys, have a blast. All right, guys, quick update on the results here. I had to do it, and I can barely contain myself. It came out awesome. I really hope if someone goes out there, please try it. Go on Amazon, look up this pho powder, PHO, Vietnamese spice. The flavor of this is just so intense. It is awesome. Looking at it now, I got to dig into this. But yeah, guys, check it out. I mean, it's easy. It takes minutes to make. You basically add the powder to water, add your you got the fish. You have bean sprouts and basil and cilantro and jalapenos that you add at the end. I put in mushrooms, but that's not really typical. But yeah, that's it. So I'm going to dig into this. If you guys check it out, please do let me know. If you do so, just post in the Fish Nerds podcast Facebook group. Tag me, Hugo Medeiros. I would love for somebody else to enjoy this as much as I'm mouth's watering as I'm about to right now. See you, folks. Bye.
Hey, Zoe, do you know how we pay for this podcast to be on the show? Like, how do we make this podcast? It costs money, you know.
Yeah, I do.
How do we pay for it?
You got a job?
Yeah, I wish that this was a job. Well, actually, this podcast is funded through our listeners at a website called patreon.com. Patreon, patreon.com. If you go to patreon.com/fishnerds and you give us $1 an episode, you'll be my best friend. We'll send you a sticker. And we're asking for $4 a month to help pay for the show. If you give us $2 a month, an episode, that's $8 a month, I'll mail you a package with sticker and a Fish Nerds Hoorag, which is like a bandana.
I love Hoorags.
They're great.
I wear them all the time.
Yeah, I do too. And our friend Bethany Metz just started donating to the show at the $2 level. So thank you, Bethany. You'll be getting a Hoorag. Do you know Bethany?
Yes.
Yeah, she's awesome, right?
Uh-huh.
One of our favorite people on the planet. So thank you, Bethany. If you donate at the $5 a month level, you're going to get a Hoorag, you're going to get a Fish Nerds hat, a sticker, and you'll be in all of our fishy prayers. That's pretty high level of donation. That's $20 a month. If you give us the $25 per episode level, that's really expensive. That's $100 a month. You're going to get your business named on our show. And our friend Josh Lopes gives us $25 an episode to mention his business. And his business is lopestax.com. Now, Josh is a friend of ours, has a rental property on our property, which is nice. And he's also a very good accountant. So if you're in Massachusetts and you need someone to help with your taxes, go to lopestax.com and tell Josh thank you for supporting the Fish Nerds. That's patreon.com/fishnerds to support the show. Now, we're going to get a little uncomfortable, Zoe. We're going to talk about a fish called the pacu, our number 2 scariest fish.
It looks just like a piranha.
It is just like a piranha. Now, this photo you're looking at right now, Zoe, is not the pacu that we're talking about. The pacu we're talking about has giant human-like teeth in the front of his mouth. Big, giant crunchers. And it's known as the legendary nut cruncher. Yeah. Now, we're going to talk about the difference between boys and girls for a second here. And I'm going to tell you why this is the scariest fish around. Lots and lots of people around the world have claimed that these fish, in their native habitat, like to eat nuts. They fall from the trees and they crunch up the nuts from the trees. Can you tell me the difference between boys and girls? This is uncomfortable, I know. We've got different kinds of parts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we don't have this conversation very often because we don't need to.
No.
Nor do we want to. But boys have external parts on them that girls don't, right? You agree with that?
Yes.
All right. And one of those parts, and if you say this in front of Mom, you'll get in trouble. One of those parts, the slang term, people call them nuts, right? I know. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this.
I knew that.
You knew that.
I knew that.
All right. And you might tell your friends, leave me alone or I'm going to kick you in the nuts, right? We don't ever say
I
that.
never
No,
say that.
never do that. But people do say that, and they will. Now, the pacu, which is a type of piranha, has these teeth, and they do in the wild eat nuts. Now, for years, places like the Huffington Post and Jeremy Wade have been claiming that these fish, not only do they eat real nuts from trees, but if you swim naked around them and you're a boy, they will eat your nuts. So that's the pacu, the legendary nutcracker, the number 2 most feared fish in the world.
Doesn't sound very scary.
It is
but it's nuts.
very scary if you have nuts and you're swimming naked. That's why I never swim naked. Ever.
I've never seen you even without a shirt swimming.
That's right. Well, that's because I'm a never nude. So don't you worry. And by the way, Zoe, do you think that's ever happened? Do you think anyone's ever had themselves bitten by a pacu?
No.
No, it's never happened. It's called a pacu of lies. But that story is shared widely over the internet, and so we have to, of course, use it because we're talking about the most feared fish. All right, hey, please welcome to the show the guys from Fisherguiding. All right, I'm here hanging out in Brooklyn. No, I'm in Queens, New York. I'm not really in Queens, but I'm hanging out with 2 guys, Luke Campbell and Edward Hill. Here's from their website. Here's what it says. It says, Fisherguiding was built on the belief that fishing should be accessible to everyone. Our platform connects people to a global network of guides and simplifies the booking process with safe, easy-to-use website. Whether you're a seasoned pro or new to the water, our fishing community has a place for you. Luke and Edward, welcome to the Fish Nerds. How are you?
We're doing great. Thank you for having us, Clay. This is Luke. Hello, Fish Nerds.
Hey, Luke.
Yeah, glad to be a part of it. Thanks for having us on board. This is Edward here. Looking forward to it.
And I understand this is the first time you're on a podcast.
It is, yeah. Definitely excited to make it happen and to have it be such a cool podcast like this one.
Yet we're recording in a studio in Queens at another podcaster's house. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. It is. My old roommate is a comedian and has a podcast of his own. It's called The Cold Read. Yeah, so it's pretty great.
The Cold Read podcast. I'll actually put a link up in the show notes. I haven't heard it yet, but I'm going to totally check it out. And I love other podcasters. I always want to support anybody else doing this work because it's we need each other to get better. And like needing each other to get better, you guys are starting up a business called Fisher Guide Service. Could one of you guys give us the elevator pitch, the short version? What is Fisher Guide Service?
So I'll hop in there. Fisherguiding is a business that we've been working on now it launched in March, but I had left my job in DC and was looking for something to do, trying to book a fishing trip. And I was trying to do it online. It didn't end up happening because kind of information overload when I was looking for guides. And so I thought, well, why don't I try to set this up on? So I worked at a fly shop when I was in college and have always been fishing my whole life. And so tried to use a little bit of that experience and talk with a lot of people in the industry and have been building that sense. And had Luke has come on board or started helping out last January, and then came on board this spring. And we've been kind of rolling with getting guides on board, up to 100 now, and really trying to show that this is a marketplace that can work in the fishing industry. I think the timing is right. We can see it in other industries where booking is happening online, and I think it'll help both guides and users simplify the whole process. That's really the goal.
That's the goal. And you got 100 people so far, and the Fish Nerds Guide Service have recently signed with you. So we're looking forward to getting our platform up and running. Sorry, I've been slow on getting my my photos to you guys and getting the website up and going, but it's pretty cool. And the way you guys make money is you keep a percentage of the money for the bookings. People book through your website, and then you get a percentage of the trip from the guide. Is that right?
That's correct. We just take a small commission on the trips, and guides only pay for a commission on the trips that they accept through us. So there's no listing or sign up fee, but we do advertise and promote all the guides listed with us. That includes fishing guides, charters, fishing lodges, fly fishing shops. We've got a couple of each different type worldwide. So we're in 10 countries right now. Like Edward said, we passed our 100 guide milestone a couple weeks ago, up to 110 today, and looking to keep going. Maybe Fish Nerds will be number 111.
Well, we are in there, so we are it. So, which is exciting. And now there's other companies who do what you do, right? I've worked with other companies. I've talked to other people who do this. What is different from what you do versus what, say, one of your competitors does?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think one way we can differentiate ourselves is early on is by the commission. It's a 6% commission to try to keep that low.
Yeah, that is lower than I've seen. Lowest I've seen is 15%. So 6 seems pretty low.
Yeah, we've kind of been looking at that and seeing how is it the best way to help both guides, charters, and make Fisher a sustainable business. And so I think it's a way to really, when we grow to have scale, I think it'll work out. Yeah.
And you guys are like in real startup mode right now. You didn't quit your jobs yet, right?
This is my full-time, both of our full-time jobs. Yeah.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. So actually,
wow. Then I apologize. You quit your jobs?
Yeah, we're all in, but
that's crazy.
Right. So like the 6% commission, I guess we recognize in our planning has to be long-term, because I think, as you can see, like that's not necessarily sustainable with 100 guides, but we're trying to put in the work and build the supply side of the marketplace by getting guides on with the 6% commission, and then hoping it gets to the point where that scale turns out to make Fisherguiding successful in the long run.
Well, I have to tell you, your website is beautiful. It looks great.
Fisherguiding.com.
Fisherguiding.com. All right. So you guys quit your jobs. What did you do before Fisher Guide?
So before Fisherguiding, I was worked at a startup in Charlottesville. So Luke and I are both originally from Charlottesville, Virginia. We went to high school in Charlottesville. And so I went back after school to Charlottesville and worked at a food ordering startup there, like a Grubhub kind of style place.
Yep.
And then from there, I worked at a public policy analysis communications firm in Washington, D.C.
And Edward, you have that voice too that sounds like a communications person. Like you've done a lot of public speaking.
I did a lot of plays at the summer camp that I went to in New Hampshire, actually.
Where'd you go?
I went to Pasquaney on Lake Newfound.
Newfound Lake's fabulous. I love ice fishing out there.
Yeah. I was up there for a week this summer in the Crawford Notch area.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's I live in the White Mountains, so you're in my area.
Yeah, it's I've spent I think 11 summers up there at least some point. So it's a beautiful place. Love it. That's
really cool. Newfound Lake is such a beautiful, big, clear water lake. If people who've never been there, it's a difficult lake to fish because the water's so crystal clear. It's super duper deep. Edward, have you ever been ice fishing?
I haven't. I've seen. I know they do it on Newfound though. I've been up to Newfound in the winter and seen them out there, but I haven't myself.
There's actually a group of fishermen on Newfound Lake called the Newfound Circus. And if you find yourself in New Hampshire any winter, look me up. You can actually book me through this great website called Fisherguiding, and I'll take you to Newfound Lake and introduce you to the Newfound Circus. But they're a bunch of hardcore, old, crusty anglers who are internet savvy, who built this village on Newfound Lake behind Mayhew Island. And they just have all these great adventures right there on the lake. So
that's awesome.
I'd love to take you out there.
Yeah, I'd love to get up there. I've got to get out ice fishing.
Mm-hmm. Totally fun. Now, Luke, what about you? Ice fisher? Chicago, come on.
I have not yet, but I have plans to do it for the first time this winter with my uncle in the North Woods of Wisconsin.
Oh, they do real ice fishing out there.
Yeah, I've got to get prepared. I've got to buy a bigger coat, I think. Yeah, even in Chicago, I'm not used to that Wisconsin Northwoods weather.
No, it's painful. No, it's funny. I was on a Facebook group called 603 Outpost the other day, and they do this thing where they like put up an item, and everyone will put like $8 in the pot, and then they'll draw a name out of the hat, and you win the item. For $8, I won a heated jacket from Milwaukee Tools. So a little battery pack that plugs into it, and it heats up, has coils in it, heats you all the way up. So I'm going to be so
Wow.
warm. Yeah. Crazy.
Haven't heard of that. Maybe we need to do a Fisherguiding giveaway to someone who books an ice fishing trip.
There it is. Something for it. But anyway, it's really cool. So let me ask you a little bit. So you guys both jumped full force into this fishing business. Now I know making a living in the fishing industry is near impossible. It's hard. I work other jobs on top of guiding. Are you guys at all scared, like just being in this space and just trying to figure this out? Are you confident in the outcomes?
Yeah, I think any reasonable person has a little bit of fear, and I think there are definitely moments of where you think, "What am I doing?" But it's really helpful having a partner going through it. And we've got a good team of just advisors who have been helping us along the way and have been just supported. Newly married, and so my wife's been helping out a lot as well. And so I think trying to stay positive when you can, but definitely there's some scary moments.
Yeah, I'm sure, and it'll be more to come. By the way, I'm sure of it. And that's the interest sharp. And that's like I always think it's incredibly brave to quit your jobs and quit things that make money for the potential of making a whole bunch more money. I've never had that kind of guts, but I'm impressed by it. Do you guys have investors? Like, have you gone out to that level of work yet where you're like looking for that money for getting really big? Like you got to go Shark Tank or one of those kind of things?
Yeah, we've raised a round of convertible notes earlier this summer. But yeah, we're trying to really grow the business right now and focus on, like Luke said earlier, kind of filling the supply side and getting real inventory of guides and charters and lodges on board with us.
Sure. That'll give you a proof of concept too. If you can get, from 100 to ideally you'd be around 10,000, right? If you really want to have big numbers to make that 6% a viable stream of money for you.
Totally. And we've been, so the early round is, I think what we saw is enough to start this and prove what we can build and get the first initial inventory on board, get the interactions going. And it's enough to where we've been able to do a lot of experimenting with advertising and recruitment and start to get our name out there. But the next round will have to come soon. And then, we're just looking forward to continuing to grow it incrementally and hit the curve even faster.
Yeah, and any chance you guys are going to have an app in the future for this to really kind of get there?
That's definitely in our minds. We're focused right now on optimizing the website to be as streamlined a process for both guides and users on both sides. But an app is definitely in the plans for the future.
Well, the good news is I visited hundreds of guide websites trying to figure out my business, and almost all are terrible to look at. Your website is beautiful, and it's comfortable to look at, and it's visually appealing, and all the things are working on it. So that's in your favor. So good job on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's really nice of you to say.
Yeah, and I'm excited for you, and I hope that you guys can pull this off because it's badly needed. We need more people fishing. We need more guides making a living at it. And using a system like Fisherguiding can really help bring more customers to us ice fishermen or us guides. Then it's good for everybody. And I don't mind paying 6%, by the way, like a finder's fee. I think that's no big deal.
That's been one of the most motivating things for us early on is hearing from the guides who are excited. And even just the ones who, when we bring them like maybe one trip, like they say, well, this is a trip that I would not have gotten this season without being on Fisherguiding. And so just being able to provide any value really motivates us to keep doing it.
Yeah. And by the way, I noticed that you signed a local guide up my way. A guy named Travis Rocket is with you. He's a bass guide. He's his first year in business. And even I know him well, and even he looks good on your website. So
the bass look good. No,
the bass always look good.
Shout out to Travis.
Yeah, in fact, I was the first person to ever take Travis Rocket ice fishing.
Oh wow!
Yeah, his first trip was with me last winter, and
maybe that can be me as well.
Yeah, and this year he's talking about guiding on the ice, so we'll see how that goes.
Got to win one of those raffles to get a jacket.
Oh, it's gonna keep warm, man. It's so cold out there. It's if you guys haven't been on the ice, it's colder than you think. If it looks cold already, it's colder. That's just kind of how you know. All right. So congratulations on the business. I'm super excited for you. I hope you guys can pull it off. Fish nerds are always pulling for the little guys and the new people. They always like to see what's happening in the industry. And I hope that as you grow, we grow with you. So that'd be really great.
News, fish in the news. Everybody loves their fish in the news.
How about some fish in the news?
I love fish in the news.
Everyone loves fish in the news. So they're gonna love this story, and I'll tell you why in a minute. First of all, this is from CNBC. And the headline reads, "This 31-year-old quit his job to make zombie fish, and the idea just got a $125,000 investment." Have you heard about this?
No.
Well, Jesse Cusack had a solid job as an engineer designing products for the Gillette brand at Procter & Gamble. But he couldn't shake the feeling, the restless feeling. He wanted to get out of the 9-to-5 grind and build a business for himself. "I always somewhere thought that I'd really rather somehow do my own thing," he tells CNBC, "but I wasn't totally sure how to do it." Eventually, that feeling led him to an unfamiliar industry, dead fish. I'm actually not going to read you the article because I know this story. Last summer, we actually had this person on our show talking about the zombait. And what it is a little robot, basically, you stick inside of a dead fish, and it makes the fish move in the water to attract, it takes a dead fish and makes it alive and call it zombait. You really haven't seen this yet?
No. Wow.
No, that's wild.
There's a new TV show called Adventure Capitalist, and it's like Shark Tank for outdoors enthusiasts. And he was on that show, and they invested in his product. But I will tell you, he was on the Fish Nerds podcast first. We had him on well over a year ago with the zombaits.
Ooh, we're trying to follow that path.
You should follow that path.
How is zombaits doing now? Do you know?
Well, this just happened this week. So the investment just happened. So they've been around since 2014, but their big investment just happened like 2 days ago.
Oh, wow.
So $125,000. Interestingly, 4 other previous Fish Nerds guests have gone on Shark Tank and got big investments as well. So, and that's not on this article. Somehow CNSBC or whatever this is forgot to mention the Fish Nerds. We always get
credit. And we were listening to one of the podcasts earlier. The Huff Post was not throwing out your credit as well.
The Huff Post rips us off, and Snopes.com stole a headline from us.
Ooh, brutal.
We'll give you credit for anything.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Snopes used the headline "Paku of Lies," and that was my joke that I wrote, and they stole it. And I emailed them, and I said, "Hey, you guys, great article, totally accurate, except for one problem. I wrote the headline. Here's the citations. Can I please have my citations?" And no response. So screw you, Snopes.
There's part of the Paku of Lies.
Mm-hmm. And usually I like Snopes. But we're excited for the zombait guys. And actually I'm going to reach out to them and see if I can get them back on the show now that they're hit the big time.
We're pulling for them too now.
Yeah. So on our show, Zombaits has been on our show. Have you heard of line cutters?
I have heard of line cutters.
Yeah, it's a ring that cuts fishing line. They were on our show and they went on Shark Tank and got an investment. The World Record Striper Company's been on our show, and they've got a deal on Shark Tank. Who else? Fish Call has been on our show and got a deal on Shark Tank.
Oh,
which is this device put in the water, and it attracts fish, and you catch more fish that way. So we are the stepping stone for all the big-time everythings, including...
Another reason we're grateful to be here.
Yeah, including you guys. So... And that's the only good news tonight. Here's some bad news.
Ooh.
From the Times Leader in Pennsylvania. Man killed by fish and boat officer had history of run-ins with law enforcement. Court records for a man killed by a Pennsylvania fish and boat officer along the Susquehanna River on Tuesday revealed numerous run-ins with law enforcement, including an escape from the Lunar County Correctional Facility. Sean Bohinski, 37, was fatally shot by a waterways conservation officer after a fight broke out between the two near the Canal Street Park. From the headline, I thought the boat killed him. So
that's what I thought.
Man killed by fish and boat. That's why.
Too bad.
Yeah, that's actually less interesting now that I know he got shot. So
it sounded like the fish made the first hit.
I know. This is why you should always read your news before you read your news. I'm actually not going to read the rest of it now because it's so sad. But I thought the boat had killed him or a fish had killed him, and that's how he'd want to go. But being shot by a conservation officer, that's no fun.
Yeah,
That's sad. Sorry to bring you guys down.
that's all right.
That's the saddest thing I've ever done. All right, this is from the San Francisco Weekly. And the headline is, won't somebody please think of the koi fish? Now, we here at the Fish Nerds love the koi fish. A few weeks ago, we had the band, the koi division on the show. Did you guys hear that one?
I heard that one. Yeah. We're a fan of fishing-inspired lyrics as well.
Yeah. What's your favorite fish-inspired lyric?
Take Me to the River sung by Big Mouth Billy Bass was always my favorite.
I like that he's the original artist.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's perfect. Good answer.
Thank you.
All right.
I guess I say, yeah. Quick plug. We did a blog post reimagining some Chainsmokers lyrics as inspired by fishing, and through Reddit we managed to get them to look at it, and that's been actually Fisherguiding's biggest source of traffic. Was an overnight sensation of the Chainsmokers looking at our blog post on Facebook Live, and
that's fantastic. How do you know they looked at it?
They were looking at it during a Reddit AMA, and
no kidding.
It was just something we kind of did. I wrote this post like at night while I was listening to some Chainsmokers and working on Fisherguiding, and just a fun idea for an hour or so, and kind of threw it out there, and wouldn't have thought that it would have done us much good. It was just something fun early on in our venture, and turned out to be really cool.
It's always the dumbest things that work. You never know. Some things you work really hard on, no one cares about, and then you mess around with something silly like that, and it catches on.
Yeah, got to get lucky with some things.
We all deserve to get lucky.
Passion.
Yeah. All right, so think of the koi fish. In animal rescue news that few saw coming out of the North Bay fires, animal groups also took koi fish under their fins, they announced on Wednesday. Sonoma County Animal Services now holds more than 130 koi fish that were called in from 8 homes until they can be reunited with their owners. The American Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals partnered with the county to remove the bulk of those fish on Tuesday. In the push to offer resources to displaced owners unable to care for their animals, families contacted the groups to help care for the fish. ASPCA says without the removal effort, the koi fish would have been left without food and functioning aeration system to keep them alive. So this is nice. They took all these koi fish home. Now, it's funny. You don't think about fish rescues when you think about forest fires. Yeah. You guys ever been involved in a big fire?
I lived in Montana when I was 10.
So, yes.
And there was just for a little while, and but it was that season. So somewhat familiar, but not. I mean, that was really my only experience. But it was pretty crazy what it was, seeing it.
They're pretty massive. Now, I wouldn't even think about the koi fish. I think it's neat that people gave that kind of thought to it. The thing about koi fish is if they get in a different water body, they're completely invasive and they're terrible. And so it might not be a bad thing to let them go, but at the same time, as a empathetic person, you kind of want to see them get rescued too. So it's kind of a hard dichotomy to balance.
Yeah, I'm wondering if these are the koi fish in like the backyard ponds.
That's what it sounds like. Okay, and that's why they're saying reunite with their owners. Because I think if they were wild in ponds, they wouldn't have been able to get to them.
Well, this is a big uplifting story. This is well needed after that last one.
I know after I brought you down with shooting people. So sorry about that. But I personally, they're just koi fish. So that's how I come down.
I listened to the segment about the koi fishing in Kansas City.
Yeah, with Jeff Donaldson.
Yeah, it was surprising how difficult. I haven't caught carp, and I've heard about how tough they are. But it's crazy hearing everything that had to happen.
Well, it's really weird. I once went on a quest to catch and eat every kind of freshwater fish in New Hampshire, and one of the hardest fish to catch was a goldfish, and it was the same reason. No matter what you did, you kept catching every other kind of fish. So it's really tricky because they're not that aggressive like a bluegill or a bass or a catfish. So they are challenging. But I did. I caught them all and we ate them all as well. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So Yeah, there was 48 species, and not all were good, but all were really cool and interesting. And that's how that's kind of the origin story of the fish nerds. That's where we came from. That's our roots.
How's that work out as a diet?
As a diet, you get high mercury levels and brain damage, so it's perfect.
We got to get on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially in Queens.
Perfect. Yeah.
Here, the East River is great this time. Now, I lived on Governor's Island as a kid, and we used to fish for bluefish right off the island. We'd get them, and my mom would cook them.
Yeah, we had some bluefish this past, not this past year. We caught some bluefish this past year, but I ate some last year.
Out of the Hudson?
Off of Massachusetts, off Nantucket.
Well, that's different.
Yeah.
we cooked the bluefish this summer, caught in the Long Island Sound.
It was the pogie.
We cooked the bluefish too, actually, and we cooked it. So we made the fatal mistake of well, not fatal, but close. I think we froze it one night and then tried to cook it the next day, and it even made the dog sick. So eat your bluefish quick.
Yeah, the fresher the better. Now we ate. I remember. I don't remember much. I was in 7th grade, but I remember my mom putting it on the plate and this rainbow oil slick coming out of the meat onto the plate. Ooh. So that's my East River bluefish eating adventure. And I don't recall if I got sick or not, but I know I was grossed out. All right. And this last story, I'm not going to read the whole thing of. This is from Scientific America. And I really like the title. It's Are All Fish the Same Shape If You Stretch Them Out? And I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at this or not.
Not yet.
No, but you should visit this. I'll put links up at fishnerds.com. But Darcy Thompson and the Victorian Tale of the Magnum Opus on Growth and Form. And I'm not going to read you the article, but basically they took all these fishes and they laid them out on a grid, and they determined that if you stretch the grid just right, all fish are exactly the same. It's as simple as that.
Even like the look down fish or the permit that have the super slant forward.
Yeah.
Forehead. That's crazy.
Yeah, and they one of the drawings on the website is they take an ocean sunfish and they stretch it until it's the same as like a bass, even though they're such very, very different fish. And it's all about perspectives and stuff. And this is actually an older concept, but it just struck me as ridiculous because pretty near, if you change the shape of anything, it'll look like something else. If you stretch it enough.
You could stretch me to look like a fish.
You would look just like a fish.
I've seen it on Photoshop.
Yeah, just stretch to match. So, and that's from Scientific American. I'm not going to read the whole story, but this is a kind of visual story, so that's why I'm not going to share the whole thing. But I think people should go and look at that website and look at the photos and decide for yourself if your catfish looks like your pogie, or if your pogie looks like your American eel, and see if you can stretch fish. Or even better yet, next time you catch a fish, stretch it until it looks like something else. That'll be the parting advice.
We stretch all our fish to make them look bigger on Instagram.
That's exactly. Or just hold them closer to the camera.
The Pennsylvania push out.
Is that what it's called?
That's what we've been. One of our buddies has said that. Yeah,
I love it. So now it's Pennsylvania push out. Have you heard of? You'll like this, Luke, because you're from Chicago. But if you're fishing and you catch a fish, and as you're unhooking, someone can take your fishing spot if they yell Chicago, and then cast in your hole or in your spot. And the reason that is because of the high crime. So what they can do is they can steal your fishing spot by just simply yelling Chicago.
That hurts.
So you're welcome.
But I'll do it to you, though.
Yeah, you should totally do it. We do that ice fishing all the time. Yeah, and I teach that to kids so they know to make fun of Chicago. Fair is fair. All right. So, hey, Luke Campbell, Edward Hill from Fisherguiding.com. Thank you so much for coming on the show this week.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting us be a part of it. It's awesome.
Yeah, no problem. Any parting thoughts? Any one last thing you want nerds to think about as we exit this?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having us. And we're looking forward to working with you through Fisherguiding and hopefully getting you some trips soon. And we would say if you're a guide out there, be like Clay. Fisherguiding will help you get more trips. And if you're a user, an angler, just looking to book a fishing trip anywhere, reach out to us. If we don't have an option, we'll work hard to find you one and get you set up.
Okay, and we're back. So are you ready for the number one most feared fish in the world? And this is true. This is the number one scariest fish on the planet.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, when you think scary fish, a lot of people think great white shark. They think piranhas. You don't, but a lot of people do. And the truth is, the scariest fish, most feared fish in the world is a tiny fish that only gets to be just a few centimeters long.
Weird.
Yeah, like an inch and a half long. And it's called the candiru, right? It's a scaleless, parasitic catfish found in the Amazon River. It's translucent eel-like, and it grows to a length of 2.5 centimeters, 1 inch. Candiru feeds on blood and is commonly found in the gill cavities of other fishes. But sometimes it attacks humans. Now, here is the story, Zoe. Wait till you hear this.
I'm listening.
All right. So, do you ever go swimming?
Yes.
Do you ever pee in the water when you're swimming?
Yes.
Oh, yes. It's awesome, right? Yes. Everyone pees in the water when they're swimming. If they say they don't, they are liars, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, we're going to get people emailing me saying, I don't pee in the water. Guess what? What are they?
They pee in the water.
They're liars. That's right. So, but it is said that this little fish is attracted to the smell of urine. And if you're peeing in the water and you're not wearing a bathing suit and you're where it is, it will be attracted to the pee smell and will swim up your pee hole, and it will latch itself in there and become a parasite in your pee hole.
Inside, would you never have to go to the bathroom again?
It will clog you up and get you a big infection, and eventually you will die. The most scary fish in the world. Do you believe it?
Never go into the bathroom in the Amazon River.
That's right. That's the motto. That's my new motto. Never swim in the Amazon River.
I'd swim in the Amazon River any day.
You just wouldn't pee in it?
Yeah.
All right.
Even though I would probably.
I would wear really tight plastic underwear.
Girl bathing suits already do that.
Oh, okay. Just don't swim naked. All right. Once the animal is in your pee hole, it erects the short spines on its gill covers, and it causes inflammation, hemorrhages, and even death to your victim. So don't ever pee in the Amazon River. That's really important. Now, do you think this has happened? Have people died from this fish?
Yes.
I think if you Google this, you're going to find this to be one of those stories that sounds more true than it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm not saying it never happens. I'm just saying it probably doesn't happen.
Yeah, I know.
All right. So, hey, we're done. We made the whole show already. Can you believe that?
Yes.
Did you learn anything?
Yes.
Yeah, you learned about nuts. You learned about fish that go up pee holes. You learned about electric eels.
Some of the most scariest people think catfish family.
It is.
Are scary.
I think that's a very good thing to notice. And catfish can hurt you. So that's
Really?
great. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, we just talked about something.
Wow.
Wow, that's right. All right. So that's it. You've listened to a bunch of fish nerds when you should have been fishing.
We would like to thank our families for supporting us while we podcast, go on fishing quests, and doing all sorts of silly things that nerds do.
Special thanks to Doc Martin, Hugo Medeiros, the guys from Fisherguiding.com, and of course all of our Patreon supporters, especially our newest one, Bethany. Thank you so much. So until next time, follow the code of the fish nerds.
Spawn early and often.
Avoid free lunches with strings attached.
Swim against the current every chance you get.
All right. Hey, thank you, Zoe.
You're welcome.
Okay.